Dr. Ta-Won Kim stared at his computer screen in the quiet laboratory. The clock on the wall showed 2:30 a.m., but he couldn't sleep. Something about the DNA results in front of him didn't make sense. He had been studying human genetic enhancement for the past 15 years at the Seoul Institute of Advanced Sciences, but he had never seen anything like this. He rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his coffee cup. Empty. Again. At 52 years old, he should probably cut back on caffeine, but tonight's discovery demanded his full attention. The genetic markers he was studying showed signs of dormant capabilities in human DNA, abilities that had never been activated in modern humans. The quiet of his lab was suddenly broken by the sound of emergency sirens outside. Red and blue lights flashed through his window. Dr. Kim walked to the glass and looked out at the Seoul skyline. More sirens joined in, their wails echoing between the tall buildings. Then he saw it, a massive shape moving through the clouds, larger than any aircraft he had ever seen. His phone buzzed. A message from the Institute's director. Emergency meeting. Main conference room. Now. 20 minutes later, Dr. Kim sat with 30 other scientists and Institute officials. The large screen at the front of the room showed news feeds from around the world. The same strange ships had appeared over major cities across the globe. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing. Ladies and gentlemen, the Institute's director, Dr. Song, spoke with a shaky voice. We have confirmed that these are not human vessels. We are about to experience humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Dr. Kim felt his heart racing. After all these years studying human genetics, he wondered if his research was about to become irrelevant in the face of advanced alien science. The next few hours passed in a blur. Military vehicles filled the streets. Government officials made careful statements about remaining calm. And then, at exactly 6:00 a.m. Korean time, every television, radio, and digital device on Earth received the same message. A gentle, feminine voice spoke in perfect Korean. People of Earth, we come in peace. We are the heyday, and we need your help. The message repeated in different languages across the globe. The aliens called themselves the heyday, and they requested a meeting with Earth's leaders and top scientists. Dr. Kim was surprised to hear his name among those specifically requested to attend. 3 days later, he found himself in a specially prepared conference room at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Representatives from every major nation sat around a massive table, waiting. The air felt thick with tension. The doors opened, and the heyday entered. Dr. Kim's scientific mind immediately began cataloging details. They were humanoid, but taller than average humans, with pale bluish skin that seemed to shimmer slightly. Their large eyes were entirely black, but somehow managed to convey warmth. Their movements were graceful but careful, almost fragile. Their leader, who introduced herself as Era, spoke directly to the assembled humans. "We have watched your species for many years," she said, her voice matching the one from the global broadcast. "We have seen your struggles, your achievements, and most importantly, your potential." She paused, looking around the room. "Our civilization is dying. Despite all our technological advances, our bodies are becoming weaker with each generation. We have spent centuries trying to solve this problem, but we failed. Then we discovered Earth, and we found hope in your species." Dr. Kim listened intently as Erat explained their situation. The heyday had focused so much on technological and mental development that their physical forms had deteriorated. Their children were being born weaker, with more health problems. Their scientists predicted their species would become too fragile to survive within just a few more generations. "We have studied human genetics extensively," Era continued, turning to look directly at Dr. Kim. "Dr. Kim, your research on dormant genetic potential particularly interested us. We believe humans hold the key to our survival, and in return, we can help humanity unlock capabilities you never knew you had." The room burst into discussion. Politicians argued about security risks. Military leaders worried about potential threats. Other scientists asked technical questions about genetic compatibility. But Dr. Kim remained quiet, his mind racing with possibilities. He thought about the strange genetic markers he had been studying just before the heyday arrived. Could there be a connection? Era seemed to read his thoughts. She walked over to him while others continued their heated debate. "Dr. Kim," she said softly, "would you be willing to work with us, to help save our species?" He looked up at her, noticing the subtle signs of physical weakness she tried to hide. The careful way she moved, the slight tremor in her hands. Despite their advanced technology and intelligence, these beings were suffering. "I have questions," he said carefully. "Many questions." Era smiled. "Of course. That is why we chose you. You understand the importance of careful research and ethical considerations. We don't want to rush into anything. We want to work together, properly and safely." Over the next few hours, as world leaders debated and argued, Dr. Kim and Era talked about genetics. She showed him data about their species' decline and their research into human DNA. Their scientific knowledge was incredibly advanced, but they had discovered something surprising. Human beings had genetic potential that even they didn't fully understand. "Your species is remarkable," Era explained. "You adapted to survive in every environment on your planet. Hot deserts, frozen tundra, high mountains, deep valleys. This adaptability is written into your DNA, but much of it lies dormant. We believe that working together, we could help both our species reach their full potential." As the sun set over New York, the world leaders finally reached a decision. They would allow a carefully controlled research program, starting with genetic studies and gradually moving forward based on the results. Dr. Kim would lead the human scientific team. That night, as he packed his bags in his hotel room, Dr. Kim thought about the historic events of the day. He looked out at the huge heyday ship hovering over the city, its surface gleaming in the moonlight. Tomorrow, he would begin the most important work of his life, helping to save an alien species while potentially unlocking the hidden potential of humanity. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Dr. Song. "The first heyday research team arrives at our institute next week. Get ready to make history." Dr. Kim smiled. After 15 years of studying human genetic enhancement, he had thought he knew what to expect. But now, everything he thought he knew about human potential was about to change. The real work was just beginning. As he drifted off to sleep, his mind filled with questions about what they might discover. What hidden abilities lay dormant in human DNA? What could humanity learn from the heyday? And most importantly, what unexpected consequences might arise from this unprecedented collaboration between two species? The answers to these questions would soon reshape humanity's understanding of not just genetics, but of their very place in the universe. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and Dr. Kim would be at the center of it all. Little did he know, the genetic discoveries they were about to make would go far beyond anything either species had imagined, leading to changes that would echo through generations to come. 1 month after first contact, the Seoul Institute of Advanced Sciences had changed completely. The once quiet halls now buzzed with activity day and night. Dr. Ta-Won Kim worked closely with Ara and her team of heyday scientists in a new, specially built laboratory wing. Today was important. They would present their initial findings to the United Earth Council and propose the next phase of their research. Dr. Kim looked at his reflection in his office window, straightening his tie. The future of two species might depend on this presentation. "Are you ready?" Era asked from the doorway. Despite her species' physical weakness, she had worked tirelessly alongside the human scientists. Dr. Kim had come to respect her dedication deeply. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, gathering his tablets and notes. The presentation room was packed with government officials, military leaders, and scientists from around the world. Dr. Kim took a deep breath and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, our month of preliminary research has shown remarkable results. Human DNA contains what we call sleeping genes, genetic code that once gave our ancestors extraordinary abilities, but has become inactive over time. The heyday have helped us identify these genes, and more importantly, they've shown us how to potentially reawaken them. He showed slides of their discoveries. The audience leaned forward in their seats, fascinated by the implications. However, Era continued, we need to move forward carefully. We propose a voluntary program. We seek human males with specific genetic markers, those whose DNA shows the highest potential for activation. A military general raised his hand. Why only males? Our species' genetics are unique. Era explained. The combination of heyday females and human males has the highest chance of success. We believe this pairing could create children who possess the best qualities of both species. The room erupted in discussion. Dr. Kim understood their concerns. This was a big step, much bigger than just studying DNA in a lab. Then a new voice spoke up from the back of the room. I volunteer. Everyone turned to look. A tall, athletic man in a military uniform stood up. Dr. Kim recognized him from the files they had already studied. Captain Da-hyun Lee, a decorated soldier known for his exceptional physical capabilities. Captain Lee, Dr. Kim said, we've actually already identified you as a potential candidate. Your genetic markers are remarkable. The captain walked to the front of the room. I've read all the research you've published so far. I understand the risks, but I also understand what's at stake. If there's a chance to help save an entire species and advance human knowledge at the same time, I want to be part of it. Dr. Kim looked at Era. She nodded slightly. They had hoped for volunteers, but they hadn't expected one so soon, especially not someone so perfect for the program. Over the next few hours, they explained the details of the proposed program. It would start small, just a few carefully selected volunteers. Every step would be monitored by both human and Haida medical teams. The children would be raised with full knowledge of both their human and Haida heritage. There's something else you should know, Era said near the end of the presentation. Our scientists believe this process might not just help our species. The genetic activation could work both ways. The children might have abilities beyond what either species currently possesses. This caused another stir in the room. Some people looked excited, others worried. Dr. Kim understood both reactions. The potential was enormous, but so were the risks. The council deliberated for 3 days. Finally, they approved the program, but with strict conditions. Everything would be transparent. Both human and Haida ethical committees would oversee every step. Any volunteer could withdraw at any time. Captain Lee became their first volunteer. Dr. Kim spent hours talking with him, making sure he understood everything involved. I have one question, Lee said during one of their meetings. The children, what do you think they'll be like? Dr. Kim considered his answer carefully. Honestly, we don't know exactly. They should have human physical strength and resilience, combined with Haida mental capabilities. But there might be more. These children could be the next step in the evolution of both our species. Work began immediately. The first phase involved careful genetic screening and preparation. Dr. Kim and Era worked with their teams around the clock, checking and double-checking every detail. They couldn't afford any mistakes. More volunteers came forward as news of the program spread. Each one was carefully screened. Only those with the right genetic markers were accepted. By the end of the second month, they had 12 approved volunteers. One evening, as Dr. Kim was reviewing data in his lab, Era brought him some interesting news. We've discovered something unexpected, she said, showing him new test results. The genetic markers we're looking for, they're becoming more common in humans. It's as if your species has been naturally evolving toward this possibility for thousands of years. Dr. Kim studied the data. Are you saying this merger of our species might be natural? Something that was meant to happen? Perhaps, Era replied. The universe works in ways we don't fully understand. Maybe our meeting wasn't just chance. As they prepared for the first actual attempts at creating hybrid children, Dr. Kim often thought about that conversation. If Era was right, they weren't just conducting an experiment. They were fulfilling some greater cosmic plan. The day of the first procedure arrived. Captain Lee and his heyday partner, a scientist named Mai, had spent weeks preparing. The medical bay was ready. Teams of doctors from both species stood by. As Dr. Kim watched the procedure begin, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Whatever happened next would change both species forever. There would be no going back. The first phase was successful. Now they would have to wait. 9 months of careful monitoring lay ahead. Would the children be healthy? Would they have the abilities they hoped for? Would there be unexpected complications? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The next phase of evolution for both species had begun. And it had started not with conflict or competition, but with cooperation and hope. As Dr. Kim left the medical bay that night, he looked up at the stars visible through the Institute's glass roof. Somewhere out there, the heyday had evolved on their own world, developing incredible mental abilities while losing physical strength. Meanwhile, humans had evolved on Earth, developing amazing physical capabilities while their mental potential remained partly dormant. Now finally, these two paths of evolution were coming together. What would emerge from this union? The answer to that question would soon reshape the understanding of life itself. 6 months had passed since the first successful procedures. Dr. Tawan Kim stood in the special medical wing of the Seoul Institute, watching through a window as Captain Da-hyun Lee held his newborn daughter. The baby, named Han-Sol, was the first of the hybrid children to be born. She looked mostly human, but her skin had a slight bluish tint that seemed to shimmer in the light, like her heyday mother Mai. Her eyes were larger than typical human eyes, but not as large as pure heyday eyes. Most remarkably, she was completely healthy. Her vital signs are stronger than we expected, Era said, standing next to Dr. Kim. Much stronger than either human or heyday infants. Dr. Kim nodded. All their careful planning and research had paid off. Within the next few weeks, 4 more hybrid children were born to other volunteers. Each baby showed the same remarkable health and strength. But no one could have predicted what happened next. When Han-Sol was 3 months old, the medical team noticed something unusual. She was developing much faster than normal babies. By 4 months, she could sit up on her own. At 5 months, she was already trying to stand. This is remarkable, Dr. Kim said, reviewing her development charts. Her physical growth is accelerated, but it's completely stable and healthy. No signs of any problems. But physical development wasn't the only surprise. The baby showed signs of extraordinary mental development too. At 6 months, Han-Sol could already understand simple words in both Korean and the heyday language. The other hybrid children showed similar abilities. One day, while Dr. Kim was observing Han-Sol during her regular checkup, something unexpected happened. The baby was reaching for a toy that was just out of her grasp. Suddenly, the toy moved by itself, sliding across the table into her hand. Dr. Kim blinked in surprise. Had he really seen that? He looked at Meh, Han-Sol's heyday mother, who seemed equally shocked. That's not a heyday ability, Mai said quietly. We don't have telekinetic powers. They ran more tests. It turned out that all 5 hybrid children were developing abilities that neither humans nor heyday possessed. The genetic combination had awakened something entirely new. The dormant genes in human DNA, Dr. Kim explained to the project committee. When combined with heyday genetics, they're not just being reactivated, they're creating new possibilities we never imagined. But not everyone was happy about these developments. Some human leaders worried that the hybrid children might become too powerful. Some heyday conservatives feared their species would lose its identity. Captain Lee defended the program fiercely. Look at my daughter, he said during a public hearing. She's not a threat. She's the future. She represents the best of both our species. Dr. Kim spent long hours in his lab, studying the children's genetic makeup. He made an amazing discovery. The hybrid process wasn't creating something artificial. It was awakening natural potential that existed in both species all along. It's like both our species were incomplete puzzles, he explained to Era. Separate, we could never see the full picture. But together, the pieces fit perfectly. As the children grew, their abilities continued to develop. By the time Hansel was 1 year old, she could speak 3 languages fluently. She was walking, running, and showing physical capabilities far beyond her age. But most importantly, she was a happy, loving child who brought joy to everyone around her. The other hybrid children showed similar progress. Each one developed their own unique combination of abilities. Some were stronger physically, others showed more mental capabilities. But they all shared one important trait. They were completely healthy and stable. One afternoon, Dr. Kim found Captain Lee watching Hansel play with the other hybrid children in a special playroom. The children were using their abilities naturally, moving toys with their minds, while speaking to each other in a mixture of human and Hade languages. Sometimes I worry, Lee said quietly, not about their abilities, but about their future. Will they be accepted? Will they find their place in either society? Dr. Kim understood his concern. Look at them, he said, pointing to the children. They're already creating their own society. They don't see themselves as human or Hade. There's something new, something better than both. The success of the first group led to more volunteers coming forward. By the end of the first year, 50 more hybrid children had been born. Each one was healthy, strong, and showing remarkable abilities. But Dr. Kim's most significant discovery came when he was reviewing long-term genetic data. He noticed a pattern that no one had expected. The hybrid process isn't just affecting the children, he explained to a room full of scientists from both species. It's affecting the parents' genetics too. The human fathers are showing signs of awakening dormant abilities. The Hade mothers are becoming physically stronger. This news caused excitement in both communities. It wasn't just about creating a new generation. The process was helping both species evolve. Ara worked with Dr. Kim to understand these changes better. It's like our meeting has triggered something, she said, some natural process that was waiting to happen. Late one night, as Dr. Kim watched Hansel sleeping in the medical wing, he thought about how far they had come. What had started as an attempt to save one species had turned into something much more important. They weren't just creating a new type of person. They were helping both species reach their full potential. But questions remained. How would these children continue to develop? What new abilities might emerge as they grew older? And how would their existence change both human and Hade society? As he looked at Hansel's peaceful face, Dr. Kim realized that these children were more than just an experiment or a solution to a problem. They were the next step in the evolution of intelligent life in the universe, and they had only begun to discover what that meant. 5 years had passed since the birth of the first hybrid child. Dr. Tawon Kim stood in the observation room of the new Human Hade Academy, watching the children during their morning exercises. Hansel, now 5 years old, led a group of younger hybrid children through a series of physical and mental training activities. The scene before him would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. 20 children moved in perfect harmony, their bodies flowing through complex movements, while they simultaneously solved complex mathematical problems that appeared on floating holographic displays. Their skin shimmed with a subtle blue glow, a trait they had inherited from their Hade parents. Amazing, isn't it? Captain Da-hyun Lee said, joining Dr. Kim at the window. The captain had aged well, looking stronger and healthier than ever. Like many of the human fathers in the program, he had experienced physical improvements after his participation. They're exceeding all our expectations, Dr. Kim replied, watching as Hansel helped a younger child perfect a difficult movement. But what makes me happiest is how normal they are in other ways. They laugh, they play, they make friends. They're still children, just more. The academy had been built specifically for the hybrid children, who now numbered over 300. It combined the best of human and Heyday teaching methods, helping the children develop both their physical and mental abilities. Era entered the room, looking much stronger than she had 5 years ago. The Heyday species as a whole had begun showing signs of physical improvement, thanks to the genetic therapy developed from studying the hybrid children. The latest test results are in, she said, handing Dr. Kim a tablet. The children's abilities continue to grow, but in a stable, controlled way. No signs of any problems. Dr. Kim scrolled through the data. The hybrid children were showing abilities that neither humans nor Heyday had ever possessed. They could process information faster than any computer, lift several times their body weight, and even manipulate energy fields around them. But most importantly, they were emotionally stable and empathetic. "Father," Han Sol called out, spotting Captain Lee through the window. She waved, then returned to helping the younger children. She had become a natural leader, showing wisdom far beyond her years. Later that day, Dr. Kim met with the United Earth Council and Heyday High Command for their annual review. The meeting room was very different from 5 years ago. Humans and Heyday now sat mixed together, many having formed close friendships over the years. "The program has succeeded beyond our highest hopes," Dr. Kim began his presentation. "Not only have we saved the Heyday species from physical decline, but we've helped both our species evolve. The hybrid children represent the best of both worlds, and they're helping their parents evolve too." He showed them the latest data. The human fathers in the program had developed improved mental abilities, while the Heyday mothers had gained physical strength. Even more surprisingly, these improvements were proving to be hereditary. They would pass to future generations. But the most important success, he continued, isn't in the physical or mental improvements. It's in how our species have grown closer. The hybrid children have become a bridge between our civilizations. It was true. The presence of the hybrid children had changed both societies. Humans and Heyday work together in all fields now: science, art, education, exploration. The children had shown them that they were more alike than different. After the meeting, Dr. Kim took a walk in the Academy's garden with Era. They had worked together for over 5 years now, and she had become one of his closest friends. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked. "We were so worried about everything that could go wrong. Instead, everything went right in ways we never expected." Dr. Kim nodded. "Nature is full of surprises. We thought we were creating something new, but really, we were just helping nature take its intended course." They watched as Han Sol and her friends played in the garden. The children had created their own game, one that combined physical activity with mental challenges. They moved through the air with incredible grace, their minds working together to solve complex puzzles while their bodies performed amazing feats. "They're not just hybrids anymore," Era said softly. "They're the next step in evolution, and they're showing us the way forward." That evening, Dr. Kim worked late in his lab, as he often did, but now he wasn't alone. Han Sol often visited him, curious about his work. She understood complex genetic theory as easily as other 5-year-olds understood simple stories. "Grandfather Kim," she said, she had started calling him that a few years ago. "Why do some people still worry about us? We're not dangerous. We want to help everyone." Dr. Kim smiled at her. "Change can be scary, little one. But most people aren't afraid anymore. They see what you and the other children are doing. How you're helping both our species grow stronger and better." He turned to his computer and showed her the latest data from his research. "Look at this. The genetic changes we're seeing. They're not random. It's as if both our species were always meant to come together, like two halves of the same whole." Han Sol studied the data with her remarkable mind. "Like a puzzle," she said. "And now the picture is complete." Later that night, as Dr. Kim prepared to leave his lab, he looked out at the Seoul skyline. The Heyday ships that had once seemed so alien now looked natural among the buildings. In the streets below, humans and Heyday walked together, talked together, lived together. He thought about how far they had come, What had started as a desperate attempt to save one species had turned into something much more important. They had discovered that evolution wasn't just about survival or competition. Sometimes it was about coming together, about different paths meeting to create something better. The hybrid children were proof that the universe had greater plans than anyone had imagined. They were not just the next step in evolution. They were the bridge to a future where different species could come together and become something greater than the sum of their parts. As he watched the stars come out over Seoul, Dr. Kim smiled. The next chapter in the story of life in the universe had begun, and it was more beautiful than anyone could have dreamed.